Hello everyone. The topic we are going to discuss is how should culture institutions and curators respond when art challenges gender norms. Our starting point is a real-life event in 2020 where a Saudi female rapper faced the threat of arrest due to her song Mecca Girls. In this video, she praised the women in her city, described them as strong and pretty, and also showed their presence and confidence in the city public space. However, this video sparked huge controversies and even made her receive arrest from conservative force. The reason for the accusation was that she offended the custom and traditions of the people in Mecca. To understand this conflict, we need to view it within social context of Saudi Arabia. It has long implemented strict religious and gender norms. There are clear boundaries between men and women in public life, and women still face many restrictions in many fields. As a holy city in Islam, Mecca is regarded as highly sensitive culture and religious symbol. Local traditions and religious authorities has strong influence in society. In such an environment, when a women public celebrates female power through popular culture, especially rap, it will be regarded by some group as challenging the male, weaken the image of the traditional family and religious order, and replacing the image of women who are supposed to be low-key and submissive with a subject that is confident, visible, and worth to praise. Therefore, the reason why the song was banned is not just about the content of the song, but because it touched three sensitive aspects: female voice, public expression, and the circular portrayal of the holy city. And there are several reasons why she became the focus. The first one is identity's superposition effect. She violated both gender and religious red line in the eyes of conservatives. And the second one is the provocative nature of the art form. Using rap to praise women is more likely to interpret that as challenging tradition in a disrespectful way. And finally, the visibility amplification effect. The spread of the videos on social platform has brought the controversy from a local community to the national or even international public opinions area, putting pressures on the existing authority and thus causing stronger backlash. And this incident raised a very practical questions for cultural institutions and curators. When arts try to challenge existing gender norms and even touch the boundary of religious and traditions, should they protect the tradition from impact, or should they protect the values of freedom of expression and gender equality?
Now I will talk about two important art examples that fight against sexism. Both of them use art to challenge unfair ideas about women and help support gender equality. Firstly, let's talk about the Gorilla Girls. They are a very famous group of women artists. Their goal is very simple: to fight against sexism in museums and the art world. A long time ago, big museums only showed art made by men. They also never showed art by women. Even if women's art was shown, women were often shown as bodies, not as real artists, and this was very unfair. The Gorilla Girls want to change this. They made many posters, leaflets, and public activities. They used simple, clear, and strong messages to tell people the truth. To protect their identities, they always wear gorilla masks when they appear in public. They don't want people to look at them, they want people to look at the problem. And one of their most famous posters asks a very clear question: do women have to be naked to get into the Met Museum? This poster became very famous all over the world, and it made many people wake up and realize there is a very serious gender discrimination in the art world. Because of Guerrilla Girls, more people started to pay attention to women artists. Later, many museums began to show more works by women. This group taught us that art can be a strong tool to point out unfairness and make real changes. Now, let's move to a second example: Judy Chicago and her great work, The Dinner Party. For hundreds of years, history books only talked about men. Most great women in history were forgotten or ignored. People had a very strong stereotype that women were not important in history. And then she created a huge, beautiful installation art called Dinner Party. It is like a large, triangular dinner table, and on the table there are 39 special plates. Each plate honors one important woman from history. There are writers, artists, scientists, and leaders, and so on. Around the table, there are also 999 names of other great women. This work is very special because it brings women's history back to public view. It shows clearly that women have made amazing contributions in every culture and every time period. It helps people see the women who were invisible for a long time. Most importantly, the dinner party breaks the stereotype that women are not important in history. It is very clear to see women are strong, women are creative and valuable. It also gives power to women all over the world and let them know their stories and achievements really matter. Art has always been a tool of resistance against sexism. It can change people's minds, start important discussions, and help build a fairer world for everyone.
After the first two examples, I would like to introduce another important artist who challenges gender discrimination from a different cultural perspective, Shireen Nishat. Shireen Nishat is an Iranian artist who earned her Master of Fine Arts degree in the United States, while she lived for many years before returning to Iran. Through this cultural experience, she developed a more diverse and international perspective on Iranian society and politics. Her practice focuses primarily on photography and film, and Islamic culture and aesthetics strongly shape her work. One of her most famous series is Women of Allah. In this series, she photographed women dressed in black shadows. Persian poetry written in Arabic script covers their faces and hands. In traditional Islamic culture, the female body is often associated with modesty and morality and is therefore required to be covered. Yet parts of the skin remain visible, and no fabric completely covers them. Ironically, Neshat writes text on these still exposed areas as if symbolically covering them. At first glance, these images seem to align with Western stereotypes of Muslim women as silent and oppressed. However, upon close observation, something powerful emerges. The women look directly into the camera. They face the viewer. In many patriarchal and religious societies, religious and social systems regulate women's bodies and public presence. Moral and political authorities shape their dress, behavior, and visibility. The philosopher Michael Foucault described how power operates not only through force, but also through surveillance and normalization, shaping how individuals internalize roles and discipline themselves. We see women living under the influence of religions and political systems, yet by presenting them as conscious and self-aware subjects, Nasha reveals these mechanisms of social control rather than simply reproducing them. When the women return the viewer's gaze, they disrupt the traditional power construct in which women occupy the position of being disciplined and watched. Instead, by reclaiming the act of looking, they restore their own subjectivity. Nesha challenges two different forms of gender discrimination. First, the patriarchal control within religious societies, in which religious norms regulate women's bodies. Second, Western cultural stereotypes that portray Muslim women as weak individuals in need of rescue. This perspective aligns with Iward Said's concept of Orientalism, the West treating the East in the same way a patriarchal society treats women, constructing it through fixed, arrogant, and biased representations that remain disconnected from the reality of the East. Such a perspective matters because gender discrimination operates through multiple mechanisms. It may originate from religious authority, political systems, institutional discrimination, or cultural distortion. By presenting Muslim women as complex, rational, and emotionally powerful subjects, Nasha helps restore visibility and agency to Islamic women. She once described the women in her work as appearing abstract on the surface, yet inwardly rebellious and expressive. This tension reflects the reality of many Iranian women today, highly educated, socially aware, and increasingly resistant to social and religious restrictions on freedom and dignity. If we look back at the three examples presented by our group, from the guerrilla girls crossing institutional gender discrimination in museums to Judy Chicago rewriting neglected women's history through the dinner party, to sharing Naishad revealing how religious and political power symbolize women's bodies within a cross-cultural context, we can see that gender discrimination is not a single layered phenomenon. It exists within the expression structures of art institutions, within the writing of historical narratives, and within cultural and religious constructions of female identity. It can appear as a visible numerical imbalance or as long-standing silence and invisibility. Across the different levels, art has become a form of resistance. It exposes inequality within institutions. It allows erased histories to re-emerge. It breaks stereotypes. It creates space for disciplined subjects to speak again. However, artistic expression alone is not enough. Without structural change, so-called representation may remain merely symbolic. Therefore, the role of curators and art institutions is not simply to display these works on walls or floors. More importantly, they must consider how exhibition narratives, spatial design, and mechanism of audience participation can enable viewers to truly understand the social context behind the work, instead of limiting their understanding to surface impressions. An audience can shift between different perspectives, recognize how power shifts who receives visibility and who remains excluded, and have opportunities to articulate their own interpretations and positions. Exhibitions can truly become spaces for public discussion. Rather than merely increasing the number of women artists, we should be rethinking how art institutions can create a more open and inclusive environment in which diverse voices are heard and respected. Gender issues are not abstract. They are radical concerns. They concern how we perceive others, how others perceive us, and how we coexist across social and cultural differences.
In the previous part, we saw how artwork exposed gender discrimination. However, exposing inequality is only the first step. The next question is more practical. How does awareness move beyond artistic protest into broader public consciousness? One important response comes from institutions themselves. Many museums have begun addressing gender inequality through transparency. For example, Museums such as Tate publicly release statistics about the gender distribution of their collection and acquisition. Making this data visible is significant. It turns inequality from a hidden issue into a measurable social fact that audience and media can discuss. Although the representation of women artists have been improved, the data shows the imbalance remains substantial. A second approach is institution intervention. The National Museum of Women in the Arts was founded specifically to address historical exclusion and to actively promote women artists. These policies shape public awareness by making inequality visible and publicly discussable. Raising awareness also involves how knowledge is produced and taught. Traditional textbooks, such as the Story of Art, have established the artist canon, a narrative centered mainly on male European artists. Women were not absent because of lack of talent, but because they were excluded from the academic and training system. In 1971, why have there been no great women artists challenge this idea? The author argued that the problem was institutional. The concept of artistic greatness is socially constructed. So, by changing how art history is taught, these ideas educate students, curators, and audience to recognize gender bias. In this way, education itself becomes an awareness-raising initiative. Beyond institutional policies, some arts operate directly in public space and reach audience outside museum. You see here is a well-known example. Fearless Girl is installed in New York's financial district, placed in front of the symbol of financial power. The sculpture highlights the underrepresentation of women in corporate leadership. Because the work appeared in an everyday life and an everyday urban environment, so it was encountered by workers, tourists, and passers-by. This image quickly circulated through new media and social platforms, turning the artwork into a global discussion about gender equality. So, in this case, the artwork changed public attention. By making inequality visible in daily life, it encouraged broader social debates. However, policies operate at the structural level. What audience actually encounter is the exhibition itself. An important question remains: are policies enough to change how we see? Gender bias is embedded in display. Therefore, the next step is to rethinking curatorial practice.
The case of Meccan girls touched on three core sensitive issues: female voice, expressions in public space, and religion. This incident reminds us that gender issues are never singular. They are always intertwined with religion, race, and cultural tradition. Firstly, as a curator, I believe our rule needs to be distinguished from that in general exhibition, which implies a transformation of the curator's position. When presenting general issue, the curator should act as a revealer of structural problems rather than a mere content organizer. We need to clearly identify the subject who is speaking, maintain a critical spirit, and present the existing contradiction within specific social and cultural context. Secondly, from the perspective of exhibition narrative, we need to reconstruct the narrative logic, shifting women from the position of object being gazed upon to subject expressing their thoughts. Curation can present women's voice as subject by analyzing the process of how the gaze is formed or by immersing the audience in similar dilemmas. From the perspective of exhibition space, space can become a part of narrative, starting with scenes from daily life blurs the boundary between art and life,
presenting general issues in something familiar to the audience can better convey the artist's creative intent and help the audience understand contemporary gender dilemmas. Next, I will discuss two relevant exhibition cases. The first is that the art exhibition created by artist Zheng Tingting exhibited in Taipei in 2025. Titled, They Told Me It Wasn't My Fault and I Told Them Everything Will Be Fine. Using everyday life sense and mobile phone as an entry point, it presents women's dilemma through a single audience format with a 20-minute immersive experience. The effect achieved is better than the documentary narratives. The second case is the exhibition There is not fine in it, curated by Pili, exhibited in Shanghai, featuring works by artist Lin Tianmiao, using concentrate material long strongly associated with women as an entry point and centering on the body and everyday object. The exhibition presents the artist's reflection on women, illness, and aging. The power of art is that it can bring hidden social issues out into the open and let the voice that can be heard again. Sure, art alone isn't going to fix structural unfair, but when exhibition become a public space and we use curatorial toys to get people involved, you really see, think, and reflect, then we are starting to build something. We are planting the sense for change. That's all. Thank you for watching.